Welcome to our show, Excerpts from the Six Enneads by Plotinus, vegetarian, on true happiness, part 1 of 2, on words of wisdom. Plotinus was one of the most influential philosophers in antiquity after Plato and Aristotle. In his philosophy, there are 3 principles: the one, the intellect, and the soul. Historians of the 19th century invented the term Neoplatonism and applied it to Plotinus's philosophy. His metaphysical writings have inspired centuries of Islamic, Jewish, Christian, and Gnostic metaphysicians. The issue of happiness is one of Plotinus's greatest imprints on Western thought, as he was one of the first to introduce the idea that happiness is attainable only within consciousness. From all accounts, his personal and social life exhibited the highest moral and spiritual standards. He disliked talking about his own life, disapproved of meat, and refused medications containing animal substances. Plotinus's final words were, "Try to raise the divine in yourselves to the divine in the all." Long before his physical departure from this world, the philosopher entrusted 2 of his closest disciples, Porphyry and Emilius, with the extensive task of collecting, revising, and compiling his writings. Thus, the Six Enneads was published to share Plotinus's precious insights with countless generations. It consists of 54 treatises varied in length, arranged in 6 sets of 9, or Ennead, in 3 volumes. The Enneads are sorted by levels of sophistication, starting with the first Ennead, which emphasizes ethical topics. Today, we are delighted to share with our intelligent viewers a beautiful gem selected from the 6 Enneads by Plotinus, vegetarian, the first Ennead, 4th tractate on true happiness. The first Ennead, 4th tractate on true happiness, section 1. Are we to make true happiness one and the same thing with welfare or prosperity, and therefore within reach of the other living beings as well as ourselves? There is certainly no reason to deny well-being to any of them as long as their lot allows them to flourish unhindered after their kind. Whether we make welfare consist in pleasant conditions of life or in the accomplishment of some appropriate task, by either account, it may fall to them as to us. For certainly, they may at once be pleasantly placed and engaged about some function that lies in their nature. Take for an instance, such living beings as having the gift of music, finding themselves well off in other ways, they sing too, as their nature is, and so their day is pleasant to them. And if even we set happiness in some ultimate term pursued by inborn tendency, then on this head too, we must allow it to animals from the moment of their attaining this ultimate. The nature in them comes to a halt, having fulfilled its vital course from a beginning to an end. But, to begin with, it is surely unsound to deny that good of life to animals only because they do not appear to man to be of great account. And as for plants, we need not necessarily allow to them what we accord to the other forms of life, since they have no feeling. It is true, people might be found to declare prosperity possible to the very plants. They have life, and life may bring good or evil. The plants may thrive or wither, bear or be barren. No, if pleasure be the term, if here be the good of life, it is impossible to deny the good of life to any order of living things. If the term be inner peace, equally impossible too if the good of life be to live in accordance with the purpose of nature. The first Ennead, 4th tractate, on true happiness, section 2. Those that deny the happy life to the plants on the ground that they lack sensation are really denying it to all living things. By sensation can be meant only perception of state, and the state of well-being must be good in itself quite apart from the perception. To be a part of the natural plan is good whether knowingly or without knowledge. There is good in the appropriate state, even though there be no recognition of its fitness or desirable quality, for it must be in itself desirable. This good exists, then is present, that in which it is present has well-being without more ado. The First Ennead, Fourth Tractate, on True Happiness, Section 3. Now, if we draw no distinction as to kinds of life, everything that lives will be capable of happiness, and those will be effectively happy who possess that one common gift of which every living thing is by nature receptive. We could not deny it to the irrational whilst allowing it to the rational. If happiness were inherent in merely being alive, the common ground in which the cause of happiness could always take root would be simply life. Here, let it be said concisely that since all living things proceed from the one principle, but possess life in different degrees, this principle must be the first life and the most complete. The First Ennead, Fourth Tractate, on True Happiness, Section 4. If then the perfect life is within human reach, the man attaining it attains happiness. If not, happiness must be made over to the gods, for the perfect life is for them alone. But since we hold that happiness is for human beings too, we must consider what this perfect life is. We say rather that while in some men it is present as a mere portion of their total being, in those, namely, that have it potentially, there is too the man already in possession of true felicity, who is this perfection realized, who has passed over into actual identification with it. All else is now mere clothing about the man, not to be called part of him since it lies about him unsought. Not his because not appropriated to himself by any act of the will. To the man in this state, what is the good? He himself by what he has and is, and the author and principle of what he is and holds is the supreme, which within itself is the good, but manifests itself within the human being after this other mode. The sign that this state has been achieved is that the man seeks nothing else. What indeed could he be seeking? Certainly none of the less worthy things, and the best he carries always within him. He that has such a life as this has all he needs in life. Once the man is a sage, the means of happiness, the way to good, are within, for nothing is good that lies outside him. Anything he desires further than this, he seeks as a necessity, and not for himself, but for a subordinate, for the body bound to him, to which since it has life, he must minister the needs of life, not needs, however, to the true man of this degree. He knows himself to stand above all such things, and what he gives to the lower, he so gives as to leave his true life undiminished. Adverse fortune does not shake his felicity. The life so founded is stable ever. Suppose death strikes at his household or at his friends. He knows what death is, as the victims, if they are among the wise, know too. And if death taking from him, his familiars and intimates, does bring grief, it is not to him, not to the true man, but to that in him which stands apart from the supreme, to that lower man in whose distress he takes no part.
Research from the UN Development Programme and Oxford University found that 43% of the UK public would support policies to promote a plant-based diet as a climate solution. The Honourable Christina Rees, vegan,